God, how can you allow me to get cancer whilst I'm pregnant? Like, how can the two coexist? That should never be the case. When I was diagnosed, there weren't many people that I can turn to. In real life, physically, yes, but also online.
It's pain, and you talked about even a joyful moment like your son's birthday, and pain coming at the same time.
Being that this is something that's going to keep happening, we need to have better and more accurate representation of what that looks like. When I was diagnosed, a light bulb moment went off, and it was like, what if this is what God wants to work on you through?
Welcome to the Magnify Conversations. My name's Ruth, and I'm the founder and CEO of Magnify.
And my name's Rachel, and I'm one of the hosts of this show.
Magnify is a global community and content platform focused on equipping women like you to grow in and impact your sphere of influence. We truly want to see you thrive in all areas of life and want to display what faith can look like at the center of that too.
We started the conversations because we wanted to have real discussions about the things that matter. Money, relationships, and work, all through the lens of faith and our relationship with God.
Ultimately, we know as multifaceted women, things are rarely one size fits all. So we speak with many different women who are from our community and hear their stories. We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Magnify Conversations.
In today's episode, we are thrilled to be with Nellie, where we're going to hear her story of being diagnosed with breast cancer in her 20s.
Nellie is an early cancer detection advocate and content creator specialising in beauty, lifestyle, fashion, and motherhood.
Life can throw all kinds of things at us, so we know you'll love her open and frank perspective on navigating fear and sickness.
Let's get into this conversation. Ladies, it's another episode of the Magnify Conversations. Nellie, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, ladies.
We are very excited about this. We're going to be talking a little bit about your cancer diagnosis in your 20s.
Wow.
As a mum with young children, and I know we're going to hear from you, and we're going to get every bit of like vulnerability and authenticity. So we're so glad that you're with us. But we always start with icebreakers, and being the beauty babe that you are, and we'll hear about your work and everything as well. Obviously, we all have our like no makeup type days. What's your beauty secret on those days? Like, is there a certain moisturizer or eye cream, or is there a lip that we're going for, you know, on the no makeup day?
On a no makeup day, I'm just trying to be moisturized.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I need a lip oil.
Yes.
That's it.
Okay.
And literally on those days in my bag, that's the only type of makeup I have, a lip oil.
That's good.
Any that you'd like to recommend?
Okay, so I've got two. I've got the Fenty Beauty that I absolutely love. I love the cherry and the watermelon. They both work really well. And then the Clarins. I'm sure you guys have, that one went viral.
Yeah.
Right.
It went viral, and it's that girl.
It's the real
It
deal.
is. It's that girl.
Okay.
She's that girl.
She's
She's that girl.
And not everything that goes viral actually is a thing.
A thing.
So yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to use.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah.
And then what's one beauty hack that you swear by? So it may be like a little, I don't know, off-piste, or maybe we've not heard of it before.
Oh no, bottom lashes. That mascara on the bottom lashes is so underrated. Wow. Like, I don't even know if it's a hack. It's not really a hack, but I think it's something that everyone needs to have in their makeup routine. Like, it takes your look from a 6 to a 9.
Yes.
In my opinion, because it's all in the eyes,
Yeah,
the smizing, the eye
important.
contact, all that stuff. So yeah.
Don't neglect the bottom
Don't
lashes.
neglect the bottom lashes.
Give the girls what they need.
That's actually a quote though. Like,
It's good, it's good. So we always ask all of our guests and the women that we work with here is, why is it important to you that we're having this conversation today?
For me, it's really important because when I was diagnosed, there weren't many people that I can turn to. In real life, physically, yes, but also online, there just weren't many women that looked like me. And this is something that's going to keep happening. And research and statistics show that women are being diagnosed younger and younger and younger. It's no longer an old person's disease. It's no longer a woman in her 50s disease. You can get diagnosed as I believe the earliest person to be diagnosed on record of breast cancer was in their late teens.
Wow.
So, being that this is something that's going to keep happening, we need to have better and more accurate representation of what that looks like, which is why I was so open and vulnerable with my journey and decided to share that in real time.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And I think it'd be good just even for context to understand a bit of like your work life and just what that's been like what do you do? Because I know you've got a platform.
Yes.
So of course, like what you're saying about representation and sharing your story, you've got the ability to do that as well. I love that you were willing to share that as well. But yeah, just tell us a bit about that.
So my platform started off with beauty. I'm a beauty girly. Like, it's always been beauty. It's my first love. But as I grew, as I got more mature, like, I realized that there are different parts of my life that I find equally interesting. And I find that where I am my personal brand, the things that interest me, the things that I'm moving into, the things that I'm navigating towards becomes a part of my brand as well.
Yeah.
So it started with beauty and then it went to fashion and lingerie because before I had, even now I'm still heavy busted, but I had larger busts before. I had a breast reduction. And before that, I would document bras for double D plus women.
Wow.
Because that was really hard to get. It's very hard. And not only is it hard to get, but it's also hard to find ones that look good. So you will find it.
But it's like,
right.
you might find.
You will find, but what you might find, you won't like.
Yeah.
So my thing was, okay, well, I'm going to get the girlies together and I'm going to find us bras that are sexy.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
And then that happened. Motherhood came along. So I wasn't too sure if I really wanted to dive deep into motherhood. I was okay with keeping that surface level, only because I always prepare myself for the future. If one day my kids say to me, Mum, I no longer want to be online, it needs to be, that's fine, we're not even having a discussion. So I never wanted to get them too heavily involved on my socials and things like that. But then breast cancer happened. And when that happened...
How old were you?
26, last year. Last year, October. I remember thinking, I'm not going to work or do anything because of this. I find so much joy in my work. Like, my job, in my opinion, is like the best thing ever. It's I can just be me and show up and be glam and talk about the things that I love and express my gratitude for life. Like, some people don't get that luxury of just being able to do whatever you want.
Enjoy their
Right.
work. Yeah.
So when that happened, I remember thinking, this is something that I want to share.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And can you talk just a bit of how you came to that diagnosis? Because it was October last year.
Yeah.
So recent.
Yeah.
Had you been unwell or had you been to like a checkup or like how? Can you just talk us a little bit of like how that happened?
Absolutely. So when I've got 3 children, as you guys know, and they were all 3 under 3. The first was born in 2020 and the last in 2023. So I would say the last 3 years of my life has just been very, very, very busy. It's just like a whole...
There's no other way to express it.
No other word. It's been busy, okay? And then when I was pregnant with my second child, I found a lump on the side of my breast.
Okay.
But then I spoke to a midwife that came to the house to do the checkup, like 7 days after they do the checkup.
Oh, yeah.
And I said,
Going through it right now.
I said to her, by the way, there's a lump on the side of my breast, like, what should I do? And she was just, oh, don't worry about it. It's probably a dried up milk duct, because at the time I wasn't breastfeeding.
Okay.
Yeah, I wasn't breastfeeding. So she was like, that tends to happen. Like, it gets lumpy because it's hard, there's milk, stored milk, it will go. Yeah. I fell pregnant 2 months after giving birth. Wow. So, again, very busy. And I just didn't have the mental space to keep up with that lump just wasn't there. In fact, it was gone.
Yeah.
I was just like, okay, it's milk.
Yeah.
And during that pregnancy, I remember around 6 months in, I found another lump in my armpit. And I remember speaking to my husband, and he was like, I think we need to get this checked out now because it doesn't sound right. And it doesn't feel right either because obviously we examined it.
Okay.
So I remember going to the GP to have my discharge appointment with my little one after giving birth.
Yeah.
And when that happened, I was like, oh, hi, can I get on contraception, please? Like, ASAP, I'm gonna need that. And then she was like, yeah, that's fine. So that was meant to be a part of that appointment. We went to have it done. And just before she administered it, I was like, by the way, I've got a lump.
Okay.
And she was like, okay, we need to stop everything now and we need to get you examined. So when I went to get examined, we had a chaperone there and everything. I got referred to have a biopsy at the hospital. I had a mammogram, I had a biopsy, and then it came back that it was actually cancer. And that was in October, I was diagnosed.
So do you mind sharing with us a little bit about that process of a biopsy? Because like you said, it's actually not something we talk about very often.
Yeah, and you wouldn't know unless you had to go through it. So you go in before I had the biopsy, I had a mammogram, which that in itself is very painful.
I've heard it's really unpleasant.
Yeah, it's like having a clamp and like they put your breast in between and then it needs to get squashed down so that they can get an accurate picture of what's inside. So that is uncomfortable. It's not painful, just very uncomfortable.
Okay.
The biopsy, they use local anesthetic for the area. So they numb the area until it's not numb and you feel it. So basically what they need to do, they create just a tiny incision to go in and take some of the cells out. So for the most part, it's numb, but you feel it and you hear it. I think hearing the whole, like, everything makes it very uncomfortable and you do feel it a little bit because it's just the area that's numb. But you need to remember they're going through, like, there's, like, nerves and stuff. So it's only so numb.
Is this what the surgeon suggested initially?
Oh, no, this is way before the surgeon.
Okay.
So this is what my GP suggested.
Okay.
So when I went to my GP, she was like, right, we need to get you for a biopsy because the biopsy is the first, but the biopsy and the mammogram is the first step to see what is that thing because they can feel it. So the X-ray for the mammogram shows them where it is and then with the biopsy, they go in.
Okay.
Now, it was the biopsy, they put in like a very small like metal plate thing, very small, so that when they do the operation, the surgeons know where exactly to go into. Like it lets them know where the tumor is, basically. And that's what that is.
When because you were at your like 8-week discharge appointment, right, from your third child.
Yes.
When you found the lump, was it?
Yeah.
You obviously just kind of mentioned it. It seems like sort of off the cuff. Was there any thought in your mind at that point, like that was something more sinister? Do you know sometimes when you speak to people and they're like, no, I just had like an unsettling feeling that something wasn't right? Or were you just like, it was kind of, you mentioned it and it turned out to be?
No, so I feel like it's weird. In that moment, I felt like a part of me knew.
Okay.
But I was still being delusional about it. Like, surely not. And the reason the surely not came in for me because, God, how can you allow me to get cancer whilst I'm pregnant?
Yeah.
Like, how can the two coexist? That should never be the case.
Yeah.
New life, but then death, all in the same body. Like, it just wasn't making sense to me. So that was my surely not. But then the one lump and then another lump, that was okay, it could be cancer. And it probably is. Because if it was benign, why would you have another lump, you know? So that was that turning point for me.
So you do these tests and then they give you a diagnosis.
Yeah.
What was the process of getting diagnosed? Like, how did that happen? And literally, what were you thinking? Like, you know, what was going through for your family, for you? Yeah.
I always get a little bit emotional about this part because that was officially the start of a whole new life for me that I didn't prepare for at all. But in a way I did. I'll get into that later. But I remember calling them like, oh, is there an update? Like, is there an update? Is there an update? Do you have a date of when I can come in? Because now it left my GP, went to the hospital, and now I was speaking to the surgeon's secretary.
Okay.
So once I had that biopsy, they gave me a number and they were like, we're going to call you and tell you when to come in. And you'll also get a letter as well with the date. I kept calling. She was like, no, not back yet. It's off in the labs, blah, blah. And then there was one day I called and she was like, yes, we have got a date. We've already sent out the letter, but the date is XYZ. I had the date now and I was just thinking, how am I going to do this? Like, how do I want to do this? And then in the end, I decided I'm taking my whole family.
Right.
So husband and 3 kids. At the time, now my daughter is 3 months. Then we've got the 1-year-old, because he turned 1 at the start of October and I was diagnosed, was it 7 days later? 7 days later. A week, literally a week on his birthday I was diagnosed. And then my eldest, so she wasn't in full-time school yet because she was 3. So I was like, yeah, we're all going. We all went there and chaotic, as you can imagine. Like, I've got a newborn in the baby carrier. And my husband's pushing Saya in the buggy and then holding Alea's hands whilst pushing. And I'm just holding on to the newborn because that's my baby. And then I felt like I was sitting there for ages. And I was, because it's the NHS. Okay? So they were late. You can bet on it, they were late, but it felt like eternity. And I remember just looking at my husband, like we're smiling at each other, like kids are keeping us busy, he's chasing that one. I get called in. The minute I looked into that room, I knew I had cancer.
Right.
Because why are there 3 Macmillan nurses in the room?
Okay.
That was like the biggest red flag and giveaway. So I remember I turned to my husband, I was like, you know what, this is right. But he didn't hear me because he's with the 2.
Right.
And he's trying to get them to like quieten down because we're now going into a room with like the professionals. So he didn't hear that. But I remember I looked back at him and I said that to him. We sat down, I saw the 3 Macmillan nurses, and then I've got the consultant there. And my husband sat next to me, and I'm watching my kids and my husband, and I'm like, okay, the kids are here. So whatever they say to me, neutral, because the kids are here. And I think that was a kind of a tactic to help me keep it together. Because if my kids weren't there, I think I would have lost it. Like, hearing the word cancer is like a death penalty. So I was very intentional about having them there so that I can keep it together for myself as well. And then they said, yep, so the biopsy came back and unfortunately the tumour is cancerous and we're going to schedule a lumpectomy to have the tumours removed, and then you will have to have some form of chemo. But he was not stopping. He was not stopping. And if you speak to anyone that's had cancer, the one thing that we all have in common and we all say is that it's information overload. From the day you're diagnosed onwards, it's information overload. And your brain is fried. You're not physically present. It feels like your spirit has left your body at this point, and you're just trying to process what on earth this man is trying to say to you. Not trying, but saying to you. And that was it. That was it.
So what was the timeline between going to the GP and them bringing a diagnosis?
Honestly, it was about 4 weeks.
Okay.
Because I went to the GP in September
Yes.
for my 8-week discharge appointment. That's what that was, the 8-week discharge appointment. And then I was diagnosed in October. So I'm extremely grateful that they moved very quickly and got me from that point to diagnosis quickly so that they can act quickly as well. The biopsy was quite traumatizing.
Right.
No one knows about a biopsy because it's not often we hear about these things. And I think there's like a taboo around these difficult conversations because no one wants to have them.
Don't want to hear. People don't want to hear about
No.
it. And I mean, I had a friend who told me because of the family history, I went. It was really painful and all this sort of thing. And I nearly kind of didn't want to hear it. And I was like, actually, what happened? What did they do?
Yeah.
What, you know? And she told me, and I thought, oh my goodness, like it's a very close friend, and I didn't even know you had this intense examination or scan. And she's a Christian as well. And sometimes I think we block out, even as Christians, oh, this couldn't happen to me, or I'm over worrying, or the enemy is making me think something that's not, you know,
Tell me about
true.
it. Yeah.
And how much of it is also about just, you know, just facing things straight on, saying, let's go and check. We're not worrying, we're not bringing sickness and disease into our house. We are just being rational, we're believers. You know, how much of it should we balance those thoughts?
Totally.
Yeah.
I agree with what you're saying. And I've never actually said this before, what I'm about to say to you, right? But so when I had my breast reduction surgery, I had an incredible surgeon. He's like, he's like the head of breast surgery something in the UK. Like he's very good, right? I remember during my like consultation and when I had finalized the date and everything, he said, with all my patients, I asked them if they want us to take some of the tissue from the breast and perform a biopsy kind of to see if there's any chances of cancer becoming a thing. Now, I did the ignorant thing.
I know where you're going with this.
Yeah.
I would have said no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember speaking to my mum, and mum was like, you don't need that. Like, and I agreed. I was like, you're right, I don't need that. That's not going to happen, God forbid. It was the rebuke. The rebuke started, right? And I was, we were like, oh no, we rebuked that. Like, why is he even, kind of even annoyed that he even suggested such a thing, because it's like, he was going to make it happen by suggesting it, right? And I think about this, I'm so happy that I've now gotten it out of my system, because I've been thinking about that and kind of beating myself up about it, but then kind of laughing at my ignorance. And I feel like I can do that now because of where I am in my faith. I feel like I can laugh at my ignorance and say like, girl, be for real, okay? That man could not have just spoken cancer into your life. In fact, had you done the biopsy, you would have been on high alert and things could have maybe played out differently. I don't know how, but maybe it could have. But thankfully, when I was diagnosed with stage 1, grade 3 breast cancer. So stage 1 is best case scenario. Grade 3, grades usually means if it's spread, and the number is based on like how it spread and where it spread. So for me, it spread to my lymph nodes, which is what made it grade 3.
And is that why you had the lump in your armpit as well? Yes,
because it spread from the breast to the lymph nodes in my armpit.
Thank you so much for joining us to get stuck into another episode of the Magnify Conversations. My name's Rachel.
And my name's Sinead, and we'll be your hosts today as we're joined by standout women who guide us through their stories and areas of expertise, from relationships, work, finances, and more, all from a perspective that glorifies God.
We know so many of you already watch these conversations, so if you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, hit the button below now. It lets us know that we're creating the type of content that you want to see and helps us to reach more women internationally.
We know you're going to gain so much wisdom to help you level up, so let's get started.
Beyond that point, because obviously you, like you said, you were fried. You just, and you're overcome with emotion, but of course, like holding it together and poised because your children are there, and also just to help yourself.
Yeah.
Beyond that, what was your sort of conversation with God? Were you just like, what? Were you thinking,
do you know what?
Am I going to survive? Or
it's so crazy. In that time, everything's happening. I can feel myself choking up. I'm keeping it together though. But there was like a stillness and a peace in my heart.
Wow. Okay.
And I say this because I would have to give you guys some context. Going back, there was a shift happening with me in my walk with motherhood, and this was before the whole cancer thing. And I felt like the lessons that I learned in that shift became a well that I can dip into and dig from during this time.
Yeah.
And I was just so grateful that God had given me an encounter prior to this, because I would not have been able to, guys, like literally, I think I would have passed out and just been done. I would not be able to do anything. None of this would be a thing. Me today would not be a thing, because I think knowing the Nellie that I knew, I gave up at like the early, anything that's like gonna cause me a lot of discomfort. I'm just gonna give up, call it quits, lay in bed and be depressed. Like depression was a friend of mine at a point in my life. And for it to not, I'm not gonna say that I haven't been depressed, but it hasn't lasted nowhere near as long. So I don't even know whether to call it depression anymore. I don't even think it is. I just think it's the wave. But I don't think it's even depression, and I just thank God for that. But that moment, I don't think I'll ever be able to forget it, because as much as I had that peace, my flesh is still there, and I still feel things. And hearing cancer is usually you're done. And when he said stage 1, grade 3, I had never heard of the term grade before. So I my brain somehow added the two numbers together, and I was like, oh, I've got stage 4 cancer. So I thought I was due to die. And the whole time I was just thinking to myself, like, God, what was the point of all of this? Like, why did I have these kids back to back? Why did I even have these kids if I'm not even going to be there to mother them? And I was sad. I was like, I'm not going to see my kids. And when I think about my kids and how much I love them, because for me, all I've ever wanted was to be a mum. And it's like, I'm finally having that. And I'm not going to be there to see them. My husband and I just got married. We're literally newlyweds. I get diagnosed the same year that we get married. And I'm just trying to, at this point, curate things so that my kids don't forget me. And I think that hurt, that part was killing me, guys, because I was thinking, God, like the way I love my kids, they're not going to remember me in 10 years if I die today. They're not going to know anything. In fact, they're just going to be so out of touch with me. They would just be like, yeah, we never had a mum. But if only they knew how much I love them, they would never say that.
I'm getting like, emotional, because I'm just hearing it's pain. And you talked about even a joyful moment like your son's birthday, and pain coming at the same time. And a lot of us, as we grow as women, we have to rationalize joy and sorrow can be in the same place. Like Jesus laid down his life, knowing it will be a joyful thing, but there had to be death. And I'm slowly, I'm not there yet, but I'm slowly starting to see these things can happen simultaneously. But I'm thinking about how you brought your family to hear together this diagnosis, and how for many of us, people don't even tell their families what is going on. Christian community, different cultures, it's quite a thing where people like to keep silent and not speak about what is going on. I want to know like what your thoughts are on how much you share or what wisdom you were starting to use as you were about to go on this journey, because they're giving you this information. You must need an outlet, you know. And yes, your husband knows, but how did you start to think, how am I going to manage this with my friends
So my
or
husband
family?
didn't know that I went for the biopsy.
Okay.
I didn't share that with him.
Okay.
So I had already made that decision to somewhat do this by myself for as long as I possibly could.
Right.
Now, I know that
Why-
sounds
yeah,
insane
yeah.
because you're living with someone. How do you think you can get away with that? I didn't know how. I was like, I'll figure out the details later. But I remember he was on a work trip when I went for my biopsy, and it made it a little bit easier to not even say anything. But I think a part of me, I like to be the one to protect my loved ones. And I was like, what if it's not cancer? So then after that, I can say to him, babe, I got it checked out in the end and it was fine, you know?
Yeah.
I wanted it to be that. A part of me wanted it to be that. But eventually I folded and I told him I went for it and I don't feel that good about the results and I need you guys to come. I need you guys to come. I don't know what the results is, but I don't feel like it's going to be good. And then that happened. But I completely understand not wanting to share with family. Now, for me, the reason as to why I was so open, even on socials about it in real time, backtracking a bit, I need to give you guys like the backstory. First of all, I'm the only child.
Okay.
I'm my mother's only child, and that's who I've lived with all my life. So I decided I need to have a family, a big one at that. And then I had my first child, brilliant, loved it, girl first, heart's desire, dreamt of her, everything. Like, I knew that child before, like, that's my baby. And then a lot was happening because she was born during COVID. So a lot was happening in my personal life as well. Like, contracts were like being cancelled, pulled back because companies didn't know what was going to happen. And for me, that was a hard time. And then where I fell pregnant afterwards, really close, I started to feel like I had put a lot of emphasis on becoming a mother. I used to always say, like, if there's anything that I do well, it's to be a good mum and to become a mum. Everything else, I don't really care about. Like, I didn't even care for marriage like that. I was like, God, just send a good man, okay? A good father and a good man, and I'm happy. So I felt like God wanted me to open up my eyes and to focus on him a little bit more, because it's almost like I made motherhood an idol, and I started to like orbit motherhood, right? And my focus was not really on him. I mean, it kind of was, because I would still pray. How do you get through without the Lord? Right? But God knew like the deeper parts of my heart. So on the surface, it was very easy. Like, of course she loves God. But God knew that in my heart, it's like all I could see was my kids. I'm not even joking, guys. Like, I became so tunnel visioned. I didn't care for anything else. It was just my kids. And as we know, we serve a jealous God, and I don't feel like he was happy with that. So I started to become very uncomfortable and didn't know why. I started to feel very unfulfilled. That's it. Wow. I started to feel very unfulfilled. I was like, motherhood is not what I thought it would be. It's hard. God made it hard. Like, he made my one extra hard because he needed me to open my eyes. And I was like, oh, this is tough.
Yeah.
And then I remember I was having now a lot more quiet time with God. And I was like, God, this is not what I thought it was. And actually forgive me. Forgive me for like losing sight on what was important and what I needed to really focus on. Because I'm making all of these things my new idol when you are the one and only. So I remember I started saying to God, God, allow me to serve. I want to serve, because I had read somewhere that you cannot, I can't remember what it said, but it's something like you cannot claim to love Christ when you don't serve the body, his body, like the church, the body of Christ. And I was like, oh, that hit home, because sometimes I can be selfish. Like I said, I'm the only child. So I may not want to come out and do things that make me feel uncomfortable. I want to stay in my bed, child. I've got my family, I've got my kids.
I've got my kids,
I've got my kids.
man.
And I remember I said to God, like, God, allow me to serve. I want to serve. I want to feel fulfilled. And I feel like the only way I could do that is by serving. So in that time, that was my word. I was meditating on that word, praying on that word, still going through like really annoying things, just weren't happening for me. So it made me dig deeper, because that God was the only person I could turn to for that kind of comfort. And then I remember there was a prayer that I said, and I was like, God, anything, give me anything, but just make me worthy. Like, give it to me so I can serve. Like, what is it? Like, what ministry? Like, what can I do? Can I go out and talk to your people? What is it? So then that was the piece when I got diagnosed. I hope that's now starting to make sense. When I was diagnosed, a light bulb moment went off, and it was like, what if this is what God wants to work on you through? And then when I understood that I was diagnosed with stage 1 and it wasn't 4, you didn't add the numbers together and all that, I was like, oh God, okay, so you gave me the best case scenario, so I am gonna get through this, and what am I going to do after this? So then I was like, okay, praying, at the same time doing research, trying to figure out what's radiotherapy going to look like on my skin? What should I expect for chemotherapy? When am I going to lose my hair? So I'm doing all this research online, and I'm not seeing black women. I'm on Instagram. I can, like, the ratio is silly, like 1 to 20. Then I found a really good charity, Black Women Rising, that it's literally empowering black women throughout their cancer journey. That's when I met my people and my community. And then I remember thinking to myself, God, but I still can't see what this looks like. Where's the visual representation? And that was when I believe God convicted me and gave me the green light to go public with my story.
I'm just thinking about even community or finding people to share a very challenging journey with.
Because that was in real time. That's what you were saying.
In real time, yes.
So this is literally as you are walking through an unknown. What's an unknown to you?
And that was my faith.
And
I remember I said, because in my prayers, I would say things like, God, like, whatever you give me, I'm going to show you that I'm trusting you with it. Trust me with whatever you give me to show you that I'm capable. So when I'm going to appointments, at any moment, things can change. They can say to me, oh, you're good. Oh, actually, we've decided to do X, Y, Z. I don't know. But all I know is that I'm documenting in real time. So that was the type of faith that I had
That's very
during...
bold.
Very bold. But I made it a mission of mine to show God how bold I am
And you're trusting him.
In my trust in him. And I felt like that was a sacrifice, because where I come from, we don't do that. Like my mum, she wasn't really happy that I went public with it in real time.
That's what I was going to ask. Like, how did the people closest to you feel about you going through this journey in real time? To glorify God, but also to really just give others who will go after you a visual representation of what it means.
So I only had one person supporting, that was my husband. And I was shocked to have his support, because he's not a social media person. He lives a private life. And he's never really been the biggest fan of it. So when I had his support, I was really, really shocked. And it kind of just gave me the ammunition. I was like, okay.
The peace,
Yeah, the peace. Because the thing is, I had to be mindful, and I was. We have mutuals. He hadn't told some people. So my thing was, what I don't want to happen is that now all of a sudden, he's dealing with it however he's dealing with it. And then you have the masses messaging him, because it also, people forget the other person in that.
Yeah,
And
they're going through it too, especially a spouse. They are living it very
he's
much
living
with
it
you.
just without feeling everything, but he's living it. And I wanted to protect him in that moment as well, because I like I said, he's very private. So I'm like, this may not be good for him. He may not enjoy this. But when he said to me, and I will never forget when he said this to me, we were in our kitchen, and I remember being nervous even bringing it to him, the idea. And he was like to me, I think you should do it, because there are certain things that I will not be able to give to you that people online may. And that was a good moment for me, because I felt like he really cared so much that he was happy for the love and the support to come from a third party, because he knew that I would need it and he would not be able to give it to me in that way. And I felt, in that moment, I remember just feeling loved. I was like, that's love. When you know that you can't even help me, but you're not letting your ego get in the way of me getting what I need, even though it doesn't even involve you.
So you're documenting your journey, and it's, I can't find the words to to express how you might have felt day to day, sharing where you're at, chemotherapy and all these things. You know, when was there the point where even you kind of let out the breath? Because I feel we're all holding our breath, right? We're going through the treatments, and yes, they might say things that are okay, but doctors are like lawyers, they tell you the worst case. Was there a moment where you got to breathe out, okay?
Funnily enough, it was when I lost all of my hair, because I knew that was going to come.
Okay.
And it was like, okay, we've ripped the bandage off. Let's just face what we're facing now. This is me, guys, and this is what I'm going to look like for the next however many months. Before that, I was just sharing things that was happening, and my story. So I had shared the story of how it came about. After that, I was sharing me prepping for chemo. So just to give you guys some context, diagnosed in October, in November I had a lumpectomy. So everyone that has breast cancer has one or the other in terms of surgery. Lumpectomy or mastectomy. A lumpectomy is when they go into the breast and just remove the tumour but save the breast. A mastectomy is when they cannot save the breast and they completely remove the breast. Now, some people have single mastectomies, others have double mastectomies. Some people have reconstructive surgery, which thankfully is available to women to give them back their breast if they want it. Others just don't want the risk and prefer to keep it that way. Because of where the tumour was situated, they decided a lumpectomy would be best for me. So we had the lumpectomy, and then I was cleared of cancer. I think it's very important to note this part, because a lot of people thought that because I had chemotherapy and radiotherapy meant that I had cancer. No. So the cancer is actually just the tumour. Once the tumour is out and your margins are clear, so the tissue around the tumour, they're non-cancerous, you're cancer-free. So I remember posting this on my socials at some point in November, December, like, guys, I'm cancer-free. And everyone was happy, but they didn't understand why I still had. So basically, the consultant, they said to me that because of my age, getting cancer now means that I'm most likely to get it again within 10 years. So to reduce the risks, and also because cancer cells are micro, you may miss them on the scopes when you're looking at them through like the whole scientific stuff. So they said what we want to do is do treatment as a preventative measure.
Okay. Yeah.
Kind of like what the princess had recently, where she was cleared, but then she had preventative treatment.
Okay.
So, and as a mother, many people told me not to, but as a mother, I felt like there was a responsibility to my family to do everything that I could to reduce the risk of this coming back.
Yeah.
So that's what I did, and then that's what led to...
It's really wise, actually.
Yeah, that's what led to
wise.
chemo and then radiotherapy.
Yeah.
How was going through this and kind of having that battle with cancer? Because like you said, it's not just the removal, but it's then the commitment to the preventative treatment, which is
that was hard.
very difficult.
Yeah, very, very
'cause you didn't
difficult.
have to have it.
Yeah.
It's, you know, it's just a risk. It's like you say, it's worst case scenario, but from your perspective as a mother especially, it's kind of like, I need to do everything I can. This is not just about me.
Yeah.
How has going through all of this reshaped your view on like your life and work, especially in the beauty industry?
Yeah.
Like how has it been refocused and readjusted through this process?
A lot. It's been like, there's a lot of like refocusing that happened, but also I think it's important to note that your eyes just open up on a different level. And when I went through that, I realised just how crappy some beauty products were. And also because of the treatment, I found that I was having like reactions. So my skin went horrific. I was breaking out in hives. I was itching. It flared up. It was horrid. So now I was really thinking into the science behind the makeup, the science behind the skincare. It took a lot of, I couldn't wear perfume because perfume is alcohol. So alcohol was very harsh on the skin. So it was a lot of going back and doing the homework on things. And also realising that the lack of accessibility and inclusivity, there weren't many products tailored to people with alopecia. And obviously alopecia is like the biggest side effect of chemotherapy. Especially with the drug that I had 2 forms of chemotherapy. So I really had to look for products that really worked. But when I found them, it was incredible. And it's what gave me confidence. And I always say to people, like, I hope I'm never glamorizing cancer, but my aim and goal was to always show that it's important to stay true to who you are whilst you go through cancer.
And I don't think you're glamorizing it at all. I hear a testimony and often people think a testimony is like, oh, delivered, it's done. Oh, delivered, it's done. And one, it's to draw people into Christ. Everyone's story can draw people to Christ, but also it's the fact that you're willing to be unselfish with what God is doing with you.
Right.
There might be times, I'm guessing, where you want to withdraw.
Yes.
And that's
safety.
Yeah,
It's just
that's
feeling safe.
awesome. But I'm sort of blown away by your selflessness, saying, God, despite this circumstance that is not your plan, your best, but I'm gonna let you use me. You know, I'm gonna minister to people, and it's just very like courageous. It really shows you want to be used by God, even in the worst time.
But I remember that's what I asked for. So
Yeah.
I couldn't backtrack now. I couldn't backtrack now. So I had to kind of be bold with it and just keep going. But in the end, there were many times where God gave me confirmation that I'm on the right track.
Yeah,
And
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Nellie, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
This story has just blown me away, and you know, I think many people in our community will really receive it and just be encouraged. We also are a community at Magnify, and we want to know how we can support you. What have you got? We know you have a great online platform, but are there any particular projects you have coming up?
Yes.
That we can support you.
I would love that.
Yeah.
So out of everything that I went through, I birthed like a community platform that's separate to me. So it's called Touchy Feely, and the @ is We Get Touchy Feely, and it's a platform that I'm really just trying to revolutionize the way that Black people are represented in and around cancer. And it's a great platform for encouragement, but also to storytell. I believe that there's so much power in storytelling, and it's basically a safe place for you to share your real and raw experience with cancer, in the hopes that it helps another person going through what you're going through.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you
so
for having me,
much,
ladies.
Nellie. We love your spirit. We love your heart.
Thank you so much, ladies.
Thank
It's been a
you.
pleasure. And you guys look stunning.
Oh, you look amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for this conversation. We hope you feel as enlightened as we do.
We never want to take for granted that we get to gather together online to encourage and inspire each other to put our best foot forward in our careers, finances, and relationships, all while being grounded in faith.
If you haven't already, subscribe to our channel and be the first to get notified when a new installment of the Magnify Conversation drops.
We know so many of our audience have a story to share. If you want a shot at joining us as a guest, head to magnifycollective.com and fill out our contact form.
And if you're a brand who would like to sponsor our upcoming seasons, whether that's in the UK or internationally, get in touch with us at info@magnifycollective.com to connect.
We'll see you soon for another exciting episode. From all of our Magnify team and crew, have a wonderful week.